What is the best UFC card that the UFC's ever produced? Which pay-per-view takes the throne? Who's had the best performances? Which has been the most stacked? That's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. Now, as we can see on screen here, this is the best UFC card ever. Now, for today's video, I think it's unfair to say 300 is the best card ever, okay? 300, 100, 200. I'm going to exclude them simply because it's a bit of a cop-out, okay? It's easy to say 300 is the best card ever. It probably is. But for today's video, I want to talk about 3 cards, personally, that are my favorite cards of all time, okay? Now, the first one I'm going to talk about, it's not necessarily the one I think is my favorite, but the one that literally really sparked something in me as an MMA fan. UFC 261, Kamaru Usman versus George Masvidal 2. Now, I want to take you back in time. This card was April 24th. And during this card, COVID was still running rampant and COVID still had arenas closing down. This was the first UFC event in nearly a year where there was fans allowed back in the full arena. The atmosphere was just fucking insane. Usman absolutely chinned him into oblivion. The card was just Jimmy Crute broke his fucking leg. Bro, you know, Rose Namajunas with a head kick KO. Valentina Shevchenko absolutely ran. No, sorry. Chris Weidman broke his leg. Jimmy Crute had some weird injury. Randy Brown was on this card. Bro, the card was just special. It was special. This might necessarily be the most stacked card you're ever going to see in your life. I'm not saying that, but I think MMA fans will always remember what UFC 261 was, which was just the beginning of the UFC again. It was the beginning of, you know, fucking cards getting bigger, fucking arenas being sold out. It was really everything was just back. And it's 261, Usman with the KO. I will never forget John Anik treatment. Oh, fucking huge knockout by Kamaru Usman. Still undisputed. Oh, bro, it just... Why don't we get cards? Why don't we get moments like that anymore, bro? It fucking breaks my heart to see as a UFC fan. Cards like that and just moments like that are so few far between. When's the last time we got like a seriously massive KO like that? And like, especially when people were like, "Oh, Masvidal's definitely the better boxer. Masvidal might chin him." Full camp Masvidal was the thing back then. Mythical fighter, full camp Masvidal. Okay, he took the other one on 6 days' notice. I knew someone went in there and chinned him, and especially in the first round, Masvidal actually looked pretty decent with the takedown defense. He got up, and I was like, "Fuck!" I remember watching it, thinking, "You know what? Yeah, Masvidal might be able to catch him, might be able to land something." Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. But I'm not saying, Brandon Allen was on this card too. I'm not saying this is one of the best cards ever made. But honestly, it was one of the most electric cards ever. It was one of the most exciting cards ever. The Rose Namajunas head kick was just ridiculous. And the Usman KO, bro, Jimmy Crute, oh my God, Weidman with the leg. Oh, I love rewatching this main card. I don't even skip the ads. Like, I'm that hooked. Like, honestly, it was a special card. Excuse me. It was an absolutely special card. It really was a special card. But on to the next one. Now, UFC 217 is the one a lot of people would say is the greatest fight card ever produced, okay? And you know what? I'm not necessarily mad at that. We had George St. Pierre, as you can see it on screen. Here's the whole card. George St. Pierre submitting Michael Bisping. TJ Dillashaw KOing Cody Garbrandt. Rose Namajunas KOing fucking Juana Jędrzejczyk. Paulo Costa KOing Johnny Hendricks. All on the main card. That was the main card. And then you had Wonderboy versus Masvidal. The fucking card was absolutely insane. The card was absolutely insane, okay? You know, you had James Vick and the card was just full of finishes as well, I remember. Like, this card was fucking unbelievable, okay? But it wouldn't necessarily be my favorite. That's the thing. Now, there's a few reasons why. I just feel like Bisping versus St. Pierre, I don't know what it was about that as a fight. It was just, I kind of felt like GSP came back to the easiest champion, in middleweight history, probably. You know what I mean? Definitely stylistically his best matchup. So it didn't necessarily rub me the wrong way, but I also kind of thought if that was prime Chris Weidman or if that was prime Luke Rockhold, would we have seen George St. Pierre come back? That's literally a whole different discussion. That's a whole different discussion, okay? GSP is probably my GOAT. But We had the TJ versus Cody Garbrandt rivalry, man. I made a video the other day. We don't get rivalries like that anymore. We just don't get it. That was one of the fucking sickest rivalries you will ever see as an MMA fan. That shit was flames. You can't condition that fucking chin of yours. One of the worst lines in UFC history, considering what happened to Cody Garbrandt's career. Like, it was absolutely tragic what happened after this fight. But just the rivalry between those two. We had the whole team alpha male, and what was his name? Chris. You know the guy TJ needing the back of the head. I can't remember the guy's Chris. Fuck, it'll come to people. His name was Chris, and TJ need him in the back of the head. And this dude, he was on kind of the UFC's kind of radar. I want to say he was on Tough, but I can't really remember. It's a long time ago, 2017. It's like 8 years ago now, but he was on Tough, and like there was this massive beef about TJ kind of just snaking Team Alpha Male, and Cody had just beaten Dominic Cruz. And if you know Dominic Cruz, you know Dominic Cruz just had a reputation of being like the guy to beat everyone in Team Alpha Male. Like, the trilogy with Faber, he'd beaten TJ. So it was kind of like Cody was like the guy. And Cody was undefeated at the time, okay? I don't know about Cody Garbrandt's whole career, his legacy. Because I feel like every single fight Cody has, it's just like, oh, well, if it's Cruz Cody, he's going to win. But he's only had one Cruz level performance in his entire career. Yes, he beat like Rafael Asensio kind of later on in his career, but he got knocked out by Pedro Munoz, bro. He got knocked out by Pedro Munoz. And a lot of people say, oh, well, the TJKO has ruined his chin. I won't necessarily say that's wrong, but I don't know if he got properly cracked by heavy hitters before that. Do you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't say it's as black as white as like he had a granite chin, but as soon as he lost to TJ, his chin was gone. I wouldn't say that at all. I wouldn't say that at all, but I cannot remember this Chris second name for the fucking life of me, to be honest with you. I don't want to log it up because that's a fucking bitch move, but the whole rivalry was there, and that's what made this co-main event just unbelievable. Then you had Masvidal versus Wonderboy, which is just like, in and of itself, is a sellable fight. And yes, this is before, Masvidal became the Flying Knee, the BMF, the biggest name in the sport at the time. Like, he had McGregor going to 170 to fight him, to get ready to fight him. Like, Masvidal was the guy back then, Then we had Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Beef there. Serious some beef there. And then Johnny Hendricks, Paulo Costa. Randy Brown on the prelims too, bro. Curtis Blades on the prelims too. What a card. What an absolutely unbelievable card. And, Bisping sold the fuck out of it, chatting shit to GSP and stuff like that. So I was always here for that. And then the whole TJ versus Cody Garbrandt, beef's just settled in itself. But in my humble opinion, UFC 259 is the greatest UFC fight card I have ever seen. Now, I want to talk about this. As you can see on screen here, this is what we're looking at with the fight card, okay? Now, I know what you're kind of thinking. There wasn't exactly a barn burner fight. There wasn't many barn burner fights on this card. Now, I don't think you're necessarily wrong with that. But look at the name value of that card and tell me that isn't just one of the most stacked pay-per-views you have ever seen. We have a double champ status fight in the main event. We have Amanda Nunes in the co-main event. We have Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling for the belt. We have Islam Makhachev. Now, of course, this is before Makhachev became huge. We have Thiago Santos versus Alexander Rakic. We have Dominic Cruz on the prelims. We have Song Yadong, Askar Askarov versus Joey Benavidez. One of the greatest fighters ever in Dominic Cruz and a former title challenger in Joey Benavidez. Kai Kara France versus Bontorin. Sean Brady on the early prelims. Mario Batista opening up the card. Now, Brady, he's fighting Jake Matthews. Like, that's a sick fight. That is an absolutely sick fight, bro. But I just think this is like, I just can't see a card that's stacked to the brim like this. This is a 300 double card, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are like, fuck off. Like, that is just an insane card. Look at it. Okay, yes, Izzy fell short in the main event. He was undefeated at the time. Makhachev finished Drew Dober. Peter Yan versus Sterling. Yan was just beating the absolute living fuck out of him. Amanda Nunes finished Megan Anderson. But, like, even the prelims are just such good fights. They're such Kyler Phillips, Song Yadong, Dominic Cruz on the prelims. These prelims are just such banger fights. Askar Askarov was undefeated as well at the time. Oh my God. And I just think if you look at the name value there, Sean Brady was undefeated. So you have like off the top of my head of what I can remember, Askar Askarov, Israel Adesanya, Sean Brady, all undefeated. All undefeated in that picture right there. So we have 3 undefeated fighters, okay? Sean Brady's like it's kind of weird. I don't even know where Sean. I might make a video on Sean Brady actually, just talking about what to do with Sean Brady next. But he's undefeated. Askar Askarov is undefeated. Israel Adesanya is moving up for double champ status. You know, I genuinely feel like you have a hard time arguing me a better card than that. Like on paper, even if you didn't like how some of the fights went, or you didn't like the main event that it wasn't exciting, on paper, that is one of the best fight cards you will ever see. And you cannot tell me, okay? It's easy to sit there and say, I know it's easy to sit there and say, oh, well, of course, Sean Brady on the early prelims, but he wasn't that guy back then. I hear you, and Makachev wasn't that guy back then, but Makachev still had kind of Khabib clout, and I remember thinking, I was like, okay, he's kind of progressing his way up the rankings. Okay, and this was kind of the start of it. But still having look at that name. Imagine a card like that was produced today. Are you not telling me? Let's say all these fighters are where they are today. Maybe not the main event. Okay, but apart from that, are you telling me that's not one of the? Let's say Izzy versus Blachowicz was for a double champ status now, and Jan versus Sterling they're doing a trilogy. Okay, and you add all those fights in there. You're telling me that's not the greatest fight card of all time. You're telling me that's not better than 300. That is just better than 300. I'm sorry, it just is, okay? Now, obviously, it's not better than 300. Do you know what I mean? It's just not simply because a lot of these fighters were at different stages of their career when this, card happened. Brady, Kaikar France, Makachev, just as an example. But we still had a championship fight with Jan and Sterling. We still had a double champ fight with Adesanya versus Blachowicz. Do you know what I'm saying? And Dominic Cruz on the prelims, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Aye, aye, aye. Song Yudong was still an absolute prospect back then as well, so you have to consider that. You have to consider that as well. But I honestly think this is the greatest UFC fight card I have ever seen. And I watched this fight from start to finish when it was live. It was in COVID. Bit shit, it was in the Apex. If this was an arena, it would have been just absolutely insane. But let me know what you think the best fight card of all time is. And